Dan and Amy, so on his schedule today, in between celebrities and whatnot, in between a Jim Brown and a Ray Lewis and whoever else is on the agenda, Trump has an important meeting with Silicon Valley tech execs. And in advance of that, some good news we reported earlier, IBM announcing it's going to hire 25,000 workers in the U.S. in the next 4 years, as many as 6,000 next year, investing $1 billion on employee training and development for these quote-unquote new-collar jobs. And Bill Gates weighing in, hitting a couple of optimistic notes in advance of this meeting in terms of Trump and the opportunity he has to drive innovation, both in terms of economic growth as well as in terms of other areas that Gates has an interest in, like eradication of disease. Right. And Gates also addressed the issue of Trump trade policy. And he did so gently, but made an important point.
I don't think it'd be a good deal to have trade relations between China and the U.S. really fall apart. And so I feel sure that he and the team he brings around them, even as they try and tune things, they won't want the lose-lose that you would get if you start to get large tariff walls. There are challenges. A lot of the strength of the U.S. economy comes from exporters, and so if you're trying to suppress imports, then you can get into a situation where countries are raising tariff walls. Now, the president-elect is very sophisticated. I hope he's thought through how he's going to get some adjustment there without that typical sort of a tariff tit for tat.
Yeah, so the bottom line here, Trump's too sophisticated to start a trade war. There's no problem in trying to hammer China on issues like piracy and maybe international trade agreements, but you don't want to start a trade war. And you know who may echo those thoughts of a Bill Gates on one of the cabinet secretaries that may is Rex Tillerson, Rexon, as I have now termed him.
That's a good one.
Because Exxon, it's worth noting, 64% of its total sales are foreign, 60% of its total workforce foreign. So, those companies that are largely in the export business and export, you don't need trade barriers to global markets. And this will be very interesting to see how Trump massages the sort of protectionist, quote-unquote, fair trade policies he's advanced in the campaign and since with the interests of economic growth in America. And probably
jobs. Well, that's all he said last night.
Probably be one of the topics discussed today with these Silicon Valley CEOs, too. For more on that, we're pleased to be joined by Blake Burman. He is a Washington correspondent for Fox Business Network. Blake, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, guys. Good morning. Did I hear right that it's 10 degrees where you guys are?
No, it's 5.
We're hoping to get to 10. Yes, we're aspiring to 10
okay, and
today.
we're doing the show outside today without our hats and gloves.
Yeah.
We're tough.
It's like in the 40s here, and we thought that was cold, but I guess...
Aw, I'll send you a blanket.
Well, so with respect to the meeting with these tech heavyweights, Nadella from Microsoft and Bezos from Amazon and Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook and Elon Musk and so forth, what is on the agenda to the extent it's known, or are we kind of guessing trade policy and immigration and those sorts of topics?
Well, the Trump administration, the transition folks haven't yet specifically laid out exactly who's going to be there, what the agenda is going to be. But I mean, just in hearing everything that what they're saying going into this, they are talking about innovation is a buzzword. They are talking about jobs. That's what the president-elect wants to talk with this group about. Jason Miller, who is the top spokesperson for the transition, was actually on our air on the Fox Business Network a couple minutes ago, and was listening to him. And as you know, this was a group that was not very friendly to then candidate Trump. This is a group, largely Silicon Valley, the tech industry, that backed, for the most part, by and large, Hillary Clinton. And the Trump folks are saying going into this, the president-elect realizes that this is a crucial group, a group of leaders in this specific industry, and and he wants to talk about innovation, and he wants to talk about jobs. Of course, one would guess that taxes and offshore money and the like would come into the equation today. But yeah, those are the few things you would think: innovation, jobs, taxes, regulations that they'll be discussing here later this afternoon in New York.
So why do you think the companies that are being represented are generally keeping a low profile about this event?
They are. We were trying to confirm yesterday with a bunch of, these names have been thrown out for a few days, and we were emailing a bunch of companies yesterday, and some got back to us and some didn't.
Really?
And I guess that's because, some either they want to keep it secret or who knows. But yeah, it's been somewhat of a low profile. I mean, the transition folks normally walk you through, who's going to be in and out of Trump Tower the next day, and yesterday they didn't do that. Maybe because, that list was still a moving target. But the names are pretty much out there, and who you talked about: Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Tim Cook, Sheryl Sandberg of Facebook, Safra Katz, Oracle, the Alphabet, the top people from Google, Larry Page, that they're expected to be there. So it's going to be an interesting room, no doubt.
Yeah, you're going to have somebody there to help translate Republican to those Silicon Valley execs. I wonder if that person would be Peter Thiel. I mean, he's sort of the black swan in Silicon Valley with respect to this election, supporting Donald Trump and really offering some pointed messages to his Silicon Valley brethren. How important a role is Thiel playing in all of this?
Well, Peter Thiel has been the one, as you mentioned, that's been, out front and center in supporting Donald Trump, then his candidacy, and certainly now that he's the president-elect. He held an event here in Washington a few days or a few weeks before the election that we were at, in which he said basically, look, I don't agree with everything that Mr. Trump says, but he felt that no doubt that he was the better of the two candidates between him and Hillary Clinton, really the best candidates, that were out there. He didn't say he would have liked to have seen a Trump versus Sanders election. But either way, he made it seem that Mr. Trump was his pick. And since then, he's kind of been the outreach guy for Silicon Valley. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal today talking about how it's been Peter Thiel and Jared Kushner, the son-in-law married to Ivanka Trump, who those two have been the ones to kind of put this meeting together. And, it was interesting as well that the president-elect, I should say, has this advisory team that he's putting together, a group of a dozen, 15 or so. I think the number might now be up to 16 of top business leaders who are going to be helping him out face-to-face, sitting down with him when he is at the White House. The first meeting is February. And today, ahead of this meeting, the transition team said that Elon Musk, of course you know him of Tesla and SpaceX fame, and Travis Kalanick of Uber would be joining that group as well. So the outreach started with Peter Thiel, I guess you could say, and it is most certainly continuing now with the president-elect trying to bring this group, together, or at least hear out their thoughts and concerns.
Hey, Blake, do you have any idea why the founder of Twitter is not going to be at the meeting? Because Donald Trump, we all know, loves to tweet.
Yeah, that's a good question. Don't know. Don't have that answer. Maybe when we get a final list here, we're hoping the Trump folks put it out and we can jump on the phone with them in the next hour. But no answer for you on that one. Good question, though.
Maybe we'll have to
Where's
tweet that.
Jack Dorsey?
We'll tweet that at Jack Dorsey.
Yeah.
It's interesting to note, though. I mean, that some have reported, now comes the day of reckoning for Silicon Valley CEOs. And it doesn't sound like much of a day of reckoning. It sounds like a rapprochement where Trump is trying to enlist them for parts of his policy agenda and probably explain in more detail some of his perspective on these issues of particular concern to them, different than how they were reported during the campaign.
Yeah, and there was a very public spat, at least one-sided, with candidate Trump and Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, who are the head of Amazon, who also owns the Washington Post, and it is pretty much out there that the Washington Post wasn't, the friendliest of newspapers toward Mr. Trump, and he went at him. Trump did, Bezos, and the Washington Post consistently throughout the campaign. And Jason Miller was just asked about this on our air minutes ago. What is it going to be like this afternoon when Donald Trump and Jeff Bezos are in the same room together? And he basically said, look, this is the president-elect trying to reach out to folks. They're going to talk about jobs. And he said, Miller did, the spokesperson, that this would be a, quote, great step, is how he put it.
All right. He is Blake Burman. He's a Washington correspondent for Fox Business Network. Blake, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Stay warm out there.
Thank you.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.